Edit. If you open that wallet, Mr. Whitmore, you already know what I'm going to say. Aaliyah Carter stopped moving. The marble hallway of the Whitmore estate went silent around her. Even the grandfather clock seemed to lose its rhythm. She stood beneath the cold chandelier light with a black leather wallet resting in both hands, its edges softened by years of use. Across from her, Nathaniel Whitmore, one of America's most powerful billionaires, stared at the wallet as if it had just spoken his name. "Where did you find it?" he asked. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Aaliyah glanced toward the open doorway leading to the private garage, under the back seat of your Cadillac. "And you opened it?" No, his eyes narrowed. "Then how do you know what I'm going to say?" Aaliyah lowered her gaze to the wallet. "Because you're not looking at the money." That stopped him. She had worked in the Whitmore house for 11 months, long enough to know that Nathaniel never showed surprise. Not during business calls. Not when markets dropped. Not even when a guest accidentally spilled red wine across a $6,000 rug. But now, his fingers tightened against the edge of the desk. Aaliyah noticed. She noticed everything. The room smelled faintly of cedar and expensive coffee. Rain tapped against the tall windows overlooking the 2-acre property. Somewhere beyond the walls, a security system hummed softly. Nathaniel stepped closer. "Give me the wallet." Aaliyah did not move immediately. Not because she wanted anything. Not because she was afraid. She simply remembered her mother's voice from years ago, warm and steady in a small apartment in Baltimore. "If something isn't yours, don't let it change who you are." So Aaliyah held the wallet out. Nathaniel took it. The leather made a faint sound against his palm. He opened it quickly. Credit cards. A driver's license. Several $100s in cash. Then something small slipped from the inner pocket and landed on the polished floor. Aaliyah looked down. Nathaniel froze. It was a dull silver key, no longer than 2 inches, attached to a faded blue thread. For 1 second, the billionaire didn't breathe. Aaliyah saw the color leave his face. She had seen that key before. Not in this house. Not in his wallet. Somewhere else. Somewhere older. "Where did you get that?" Nathaniel whispered. Aaliyah looked at him. "I didn't." His eyes lifted sharply. "Then why do you recognize it?" She said nothing. The key lay between them, catching a thin blade of gray daylight. Then Aaliyah spoke the words that made Nathaniel Whitmore forget the wallet, the money, and everything else inside it. "My mother had one just like that." Edit. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The silver key remained on the marble floor between Aaliyah Carter and Nathaniel Whitmore, small enough to disappear beneath a chair, yet somehow heavy enough to change the entire room. Nathaniel bent down and picked it up. His fingers closed around the metal, but his eyes stayed on Aaliyah. "Your mother had one like this?" he asked. Aaliyah nodded once. "I saw it when I was a child." "Where?" "In a wooden box." Nathaniel looked toward the rain-streaked windows. The Whitmore estate had always seemed enormous to Aaliyah. More than 12,000 square feet of polished stone, dark wood, tall windows, and rooms that were almost never used. But standing there, she suddenly felt as if the house had become smaller. The walls seemed closer. The air felt warmer against her skin. "What did the key open?" Nathaniel asked. Aaliyah looked down at the wallet in his hand. "I do not know. You said your mother had one. I said it looked like hers. That is not the same thing." His tone sharpened. There it was again. The distance between them. He was a billionaire. She was the woman who cleaned the rooms where he lived. Even now, with a mystery sitting between them, he still spoke as if every answer belonged to him. Aaliyah had learned that people like Nathaniel Whitmore did not always have to raise their voices to make someone feel small. Sometimes, all they had to do was look at you as if your memories needed permission to exist. She had been 27 years old for 3 weeks. She had spent 11 months working in his home, learning which floors creaked, which doors were never opened, and which guests expected her to disappear before they entered a room. She knew how to carry a tray without making the silverware move. She knew how to remove coffee stains from white linen. She knew how to return things that did not belong to her. What she did not know was why a key from her mother's old wooden box had just fallen out of Nathaniel Whitmore's wallet. "My mother kept very little," Aaliyah said. "After she passed away, I found the box in the back of her closet." Nathaniel's expression changed at the word passed. "When did she die?" 3 years ago. He looked at the key again. "What else was in the box?" Aaliyah hesitated. The question should have been simple. Instead, a memory rose quietly through the years. Her mother sitting at the kitchen table in their small Baltimore apartment. A yellow lamp. A cup of tea growing cold. A photograph turned face down. And that same dull silver key resting beside it. A photograph, Aaliyah said. Of who? I do not know. Nathaniel looked up. You do not know? My mother never told me. For the first time, something in his face looked less like suspicion and more like fear. Aaliyah noticed that too. She noticed the way he glanced toward the hallway. She noticed how quickly he closed the wallet. She noticed that he did not ask for the photograph. Instead, he asked a different question. Do you still have the box? Aaliyah felt the room grow quiet again. Yes. Nathaniel stepped toward her. Bring it to me. Aaliyah held his gaze. Why? He did not answer. Outside, the rain grew heavier against the glass. Then his eyes moved to the key in his hand, and when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I have seen that key before. Aaliyah felt a cold line move down her back. Where? Nathaniel looked toward the far end of the estate, where an old wing of the house had remained locked for 18 years. In the last place my wife was ever seen. The name of Nathaniel Whitmore had appeared in newspapers, business magazines, and television interviews for nearly 2 decades. At 52, he owned companies that stretched from New York to California, a private jet that could cross the country before most people finished a workday, and a 12,000 square foot estate where every door seemed to have a purpose. People called him brilliant, disciplined, and impossible to read. They did not know that every night, before he went upstairs, Nathaniel looked toward the eastern wing of the house. That wing had been closed for 18 years. No guests entered it. No employees cleaned it. Even the dust seemed to belong to another time. My wife was last seen there, he said. Aaliyah stood still. She had worked in the estate for 11 months, but no one had ever told her that. The staff knew only that the eastern wing was off limits. Nathaniel had made that rule clear on her first day. There were no exceptions. What happened to her? Aaliyah asked. Nathaniel's expression became distant. Her name was Eleanor. He said the name carefully, as if it had remained untouched inside him. She disappeared 18 years ago. Aaliyah looked toward the hallway. And you never found her? No, the answer came too quickly. Nathaniel walked to a cabinet near the window and removed a small glass of water. He did not drink it. He simply held it while staring at the rain. The police believed she left, he said. The newspapers believed she left. Everyone had a theory. But you did not believe it. Nathaniel's eyes moved toward her. I knew my wife. Aaliyah thought of her mother. She knew the sound of her mother's footsteps. She knew how she folded towels, how she hummed while cooking, how she turned photographs face down whenever someone asked about the past. Some people left behind more questions than possessions. Nathaniel placed the glass on the table. The night Eleanor disappeared, there was a storm. Aaliyah looked at the windows. Rain covered the glass in silver lines. She had been in the eastern wing, he continued. That was the last place anyone saw her. Who saw her? A member of the household staff. Aaliyah felt something shift inside her. Who? Nathaniel did not answer immediately. He looked at her uniform. The simple black dress. The white collar. The name tag resting near her shoulder. Aaliyah Carter. Then his gaze returned to the key. Her name was Denise Carter. The room seemed to lose its warmth. Aaliyah stared at him. Her mother. You knew my mother? Nathaniel's face changed. Not dramatically. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But Aaliyah had spent 11 months learning how to read small movements in a house where people rarely said what they meant. He knew her mother, and he had been waiting 18 years to hear that name again. She worked here, Nathaniel said. For how long? Almost 4 years. And what did she do? She assisted Eleanor. Aaliyah's hand tightened at her side. My mother was a housekeeper. She was more than that. Nathaniel stopped. The words hung in the room. More than what? Aaliyah asked. He looked toward the locked eastern hallway. That is what I have been trying to understand. Then, from somewhere beyond the closed doors, a faint metallic sound traveled through the house. A click. Aaliyah turned toward it. Nathaniel did not. He was staring at the silver key in his hand. And for the first time, Aaliyah understood that the key had not simply returned to the Whitmore estate. It had come back with a memory that someone had spent 18 years trying to keep locked away. The metallic click came again from the eastern wing. Aaliyah did not move. Nathaniel stood beside the window with the silver key resting in his palm, his attention fixed on the locked hallway. That door has been sealed for 18 years, he said. Then what made that sound? Aaliyah asked. Nathaniel looked at her. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed to be weighing two different answers. I do not know. She almost smiled, but there was nothing funny about the silence that followed. Nathaniel Whitmore was a man who knew the price of almost everything in his world. He knew the value of companies, land, art, private aircraft, and time. Yet the eastern wing of his own house had remained a question he had never managed to buy an answer to. Aaliyah looked again at the key. You said my mother assisted your wife. Yes. What did that mean? Nathaniel walked toward the hallway. Aaliyah followed, not because he had asked her to, but because she had spent her entire life carrying questions about her mother that had never received clear answers. Denise Carter had never spoken about the Whitmore family. She had never mentioned Eleanor. She had never mentioned a locked wing. She had only kept one wooden box, one photograph turned face down, and one silver key. Nathaniel stopped in front of the eastern hallway. A tall wooden door stood at the end, its brass handle darkened with age. There was no sign on it. No warning. No explanation. Just a narrow strip of dust beneath the door. Why did you keep it locked? Aaliyah asked. Nathaniel looked at the door. Because every time I opened it, I remembered the last night she was here. That is not an answer. His eyes shifted toward her. You are very direct. I clean your house. I have had 11 months to listen to you avoid questions. Something almost like surprise crossed his face. Then he turned the key over in his hand. Eleanor believed someone inside the household was hiding something. Aaliyah felt her attention sharpen. Who? She never told me. But she told my mother. Nathaniel said nothing. That silence answered more than he intended. Aaliyah stepped closer. What happened that night? Nathaniel looked toward the tall windows at the end of the hall. Eleanor asked me to meet her here. She said she had found something in an old storage room. What kind of something? I do not know. You never asked? I arrived too late. The words settled between them. When I got here, she was gone. Aaliyah looked at the door. And my mother? She was the last person who admitted seeing Eleanor. Aaliyah turned toward him. Admitted. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. She said Eleanor had asked her to bring a box from the storage room. Did she say what was inside? No, did you believe her? Nathaniel looked at Aaliyah for a long moment. At the time, I believed everyone was lying. The honesty of the answer made the room feel colder. Aaliyah remembered her mother's final years. The way Denise had avoided old questions. The way she had once told Aaliyah, there are things you protect because the truth can hurt people who are not ready to hear it. Aaliyah had thought she meant family secrets. Now she wondered if she had meant this house. Nathaniel raised the silver key toward the lock. Aaliyah stopped him. Wait. He looked at her. What? My mother never gave that key to you. Nathaniel's hand lowered. No. Then how did it get into your wallet? Neither of them had an answer. Behind the locked door, something shifted softly. This time, they both heard it. Nathaniel looked at the key. Aaliyah looked at the door. Then, from inside the eastern wing, a woman's voice spoke one quiet word. Nathaniel. The woman's voice came from behind the locked door. Nathaniel. Aaliyah felt the sound before she understood it. A quiet vibration moving through the old hallway and settling somewhere beneath her ribs. Nathaniel did not answer. He stood completely still, the silver key suspended between his fingers. Nathaniel, the voice said again. This time, Aaliyah heard the difference. It was not coming from the room beyond the door. It was coming from somewhere farther inside the eastern wing. A recording. A speaker. Something. Who was that? Aaliyah asked. Nathaniel's eyes remained fixed on the door. I do not know. You said your wife disappeared 18 years ago. She did. Then why does someone inside this house know your name? Nathaniel finally looked at her. That is what I intend to find out. He placed the silver key into the lock. The metal turned with surprising ease. A soft click moved through the hallway. The door opened only a few inches before stopping against something on the other side. Nathaniel pushed gently. A narrow gap appeared. The air that came through smelled of old wood, dust, and a faint trace of lavender. Aaliyah recognized that scent. Her mother had used lavender soap for as long as she could remember. She stepped closer. Nathaniel noticed. What is it? Nothing. But it was not nothing. The scent was too familiar. It belonged to a memory from her childhood, to the small bathroom in their Baltimore apartment, to her mother's hands folding towels near a window. Aaliyah looked through the opening. The eastern wing was dark, but a thin line of light showed beneath a door farther down the corridor. There is power in there, she said. Nathaniel frowned. Electricity was disconnected years ago. Aaliyah looked at him. Then why is there light? He did not answer. They entered. The floorboards gave a quiet sound beneath their feet, and dust floated through the narrow beam of light. Old portraits covered the walls. Eleanor Whitmore appeared in several of them, always with the same calm expression and the same dark hair falling just past her shoulders. In one photograph, she stood beside a younger Denise Carter. Aaliyah stopped. Her mother was wearing a simple gray dress and holding a small wooden box. Nathaniel turned back. I have never seen that photograph. Aaliyah looked at him. It was in my mother's box. Nathaniel stared at the image. Then why is it here? Before Aaliyah could answer, the light at the end of the corridor disappeared. The darkness returned. Nathaniel reached for the wall switch out of habit. Nothing happened. Then a small sound came from behind them. The eastern door had closed. Aaliyah turned. Nathaniel walked back and tried the handle. It would not move. It is locked, he said. Aaliyah looked at the silver key. You used the key to open it. The lock may have shifted, or someone locked it from the other side. Nathaniel looked at her sharply. The thought remained between them. Aaliyah's breathing became slower. She could hear rain against the distant windows. She could hear the old house settling around them. Then a faint electronic tone came from the hallway ahead. A small green light appeared beneath the door at the end of the corridor. Nathaniel stepped toward it. Stay here, he said. Aaliyah did not move. You have spent 18 years looking for answers. I have spent my entire life wondering what my mother was hiding. I am coming with you. Nathaniel studied her face. For once, he did not tell her what to do. They reached the door together. Nathaniel placed his hand on the handle. Aaliyah noticed a small envelope lying on the floor beneath it. Her name was written across the front in faded black ink. Aaliyah Carter. She picked it up. The handwriting belonged to her mother. Inside was a single sentence. Do not trust the man who owns the house. Aaliyah looked at Nathaniel. He had read the words over her shoulder. For the first time, neither of them knew which one of them had just become the greater mystery. For several seconds, Aaliyah did not move. The envelope remained in her hand, light as paper and heavy with everything it had just changed. Do not trust the man who owns the house. The words belonged to her mother. She knew the handwriting. She knew the slight curve of the letter D, the way the final line of each sentence seemed to fade before the ink ended. Denise Carter had written grocery lists, birthday cards, and notes on the refrigerator in that same hand. Aaliyah had never seen fear in those notes. She had never seen a warning. Nathaniel stood beside her, staring at the sentence. The old corridor seemed to hold its breath. Your mother wrote that, he said. Yes. When? I do not know. How did it get here? Aaliyah looked at the door. That is what I am trying to find out. Nathaniel stepped away from the envelope. For the first time, the distance between them felt different. He was no longer simply the wealthy employer she had worked for. He was a man standing inside a house filled with questions about her mother. And she was no longer simply an employee who had returned a lost wallet. She was the daughter of the woman who had left behind a warning in a locked wing. Neither of them spoke. Rain continued to move across the distant windows, soft and steady. The sound seemed strangely comforting. Aaliyah looked at the faded ink again. Her mother had been gone for 3 years. If she had written the message before her death, why had she never shown it to Aaliyah? If she had written it afterward, then someone had placed it there. The second possibility was impossible. Aaliyah held the envelope closer to the light. There was no date, no signature, only her name. Maybe she did not mean Nathaniel, he said quietly. Aaliyah looked at him. There is only one man who owns this house. Nathaniel accepted the answer without argument. That was what unsettled her most. He did not become angry. He did not accuse her of disrespect. He simply looked down the dark hallway, toward the room where the light had disappeared. My wife did not trust me either, he said. Aaliyah's eyes moved toward him. You never told me that. There are many things I never told anyone. He walked to a narrow table beneath an old portrait and brushed away a layer of dust. Beneath it was a small control panel. The green light had disappeared, but one red indicator remained. Nathaniel pressed a button. Nothing happened. Then the panel released a soft mechanical sound. A hidden drawer opened beneath the table. Inside was a stack of papers tied with faded blue thread. Aaliyah recognized the color immediately, the same color as the thread attached to the silver key. Nathaniel reached toward the papers, then stopped. You should open it, he said. Aaliyah stared at him. Why me? Because your mother left the warning for you. Her fingers touched the blue thread. The paper felt dry and fragile beneath her hand. She untied the knot. The first page was a letter from Eleanor Whitmore. The second was a list of names. The third contained a photograph. Aaliyah lifted it carefully. Her mother stood beside Eleanor. Both women were younger. Both were smiling. Behind them was a familiar wall. A wall inside the Whitmore estate. But the photograph had been taken in a room Aaliyah had never seen. Nathaniel leaned closer. Then Aaliyah turned the photograph over. On the back, written in Eleanor's handwriting, were 6 words. Denise knows what Nathaniel did not. Aaliyah looked at Nathaniel. He read the sentence. His face became still. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Inside the old house, the truth had finally begun to breathe. The sentence on the back of the photograph remained between them. Denise knows what Nathaniel did not. Aaliyah read it twice, hoping the words would change. They did not. Nathaniel took one step backward. I have never seen that photograph, he said. But you know what it means. No, his answer came quietly. I know what it could mean. Aaliyah looked at the stack of papers tied with blue thread. Then tell me. Nathaniel did not respond. The old house seemed to have become a collection of locked answers, and every answer appeared to lead back to the same 2 women. Eleanor Whitmore, Denise Carter. Aaliyah placed the photograph on the table. What did Eleanor believe you did not know? Nathaniel looked at the handwriting again. She believed I was hiding something from her. Were you? He looked at Aaliyah. I was hiding a business problem. That is not the same thing. At the time, I thought it was. Nathaniel walked to the nearest window. The rain had softened, but the glass still held long trails of water. 18 years ago, one of my companies was close to collapse. Someone had been moving money through accounts I did not know existed. I believed it was an internal mistake. And Eleanor found out. She found documents. The documents in this room? Nathaniel glanced at the papers. Some of them. Aaliyah opened the next folder. Inside were copies of old financial records, letters, and handwritten notes. Several names appeared repeatedly. One of them belonged to a man Aaliyah recognized. Charles Mercer, she said. Nathaniel turned. You know him? I have seen his name in the house. Charles Mercer had been Nathaniel's chief financial advisor for nearly 20 years. He was the man who greeted guests at charity dinners, the man who spoke for Nathaniel during business meetings, the man who had once told Aaliyah that people in her position should be grateful simply to work in a house like this. Nathaniel moved closer. Where have you seen his name? On your correspondence. On the guest list from the Whitmore Foundation. Nathaniel looked at the papers. Charles was the only person who knew about the missing accounts. Aaliyah's attention moved to another page. A note had been written in Denise's handwriting. The accounts were not the secret. The room was. Aaliyah felt the air change. What room? She asked. Nathaniel stared at the words. I do not know. You said Eleanor was last seen here. Yes. You said she found something in a storage room. Yes. Aaliyah held up the photograph. And my mother was with her. Nathaniel said nothing. Then Aaliyah noticed a faint mark on the back of the photograph. A small number had been written beneath the sentence. 214. She looked toward the corridor. There are not 214 rooms in this house. Nathaniel's eyes moved toward the ceiling. No, then what is 214? He walked to the old portrait hanging above the table. The frame was larger than the others. Aaliyah noticed a narrow brass plate at the bottom. The number 214 was engraved into it. Nathaniel stared at the portrait. That was Eleanor's private archive. Why have I never heard of it? Because it was removed from the house plans. Aaliyah looked at him. Removed by whom? Nathaniel's face became pale with recognition. He reached toward the frame, then stopped. Charles Mercer. The name seemed to settle into the silence. Nathaniel finally understood what the photograph had been waiting to tell him. The secret was never hidden in the wallet. The wallet had only carried the key back to the place where the truth had been waiting all along. The number 214 remained engraved beneath the portrait, a small brass mark that had been hiding in plain sight for 18 years. Nathaniel reached toward the frame, then stopped. Aaliyah noticed the hesitation. You have never opened it? She asked. I tried. When the week Eleanor disappeared. And Nathaniel looked at the portrait. The frame was locked. Aaliyah studied the brass plate. With what? Nathaniel slowly lifted the silver key. The answer was already in his hand. He placed the key into a narrow opening hidden beneath the frame. It turned with a soft click. The portrait moved forward by less than an inch. Behind it was a dark opening in the wall. Aaliyah felt the air change. Not colder, Older. The space beyond was barely wide enough for a person to enter, and a narrow set of shelves disappeared into the darkness. Nathaniel reached for the light switch. Nothing happened. Aaliyah took the small flashlight from her phone. The beam moved across boxes, folders, and a wooden desk covered in dust. On the desk sat a single envelope. The name on it was Eleanor. Nathaniel stopped at the entrance. Aaliyah looked at him. You should open it. Why? Because it is your wife's letter. Nathaniel did not move. For 18 years, he had searched for answers in court records, bank statements, old reports, and memories. Now the answer was waiting less than 10 feet away. Yet he seemed unable to cross the room. Aaliyah understood then that sometimes people spent years searching for the truth because they believed they wanted it. But when the truth finally appeared, they discovered that what they had really wanted was a different past. Nathaniel entered. He picked up the envelope. The paper had yellowed with age, but the seal remained intact. Eleanor had never opened it. Or perhaps someone had opened it and sealed it again. Nathaniel turned it over. Aaliyah noticed a second line beneath the name. For Nathaniel, if Denise is not with you. Nathaniel's hand lowered. She knew, he said. She knew my mother would be here? Aaliyah asked. She knew something would happen. He opened the envelope. The letter inside contained only a few pages. Eleanor wrote that she had discovered financial records connected to Charles Mercer. Money had been moved through accounts without Nathaniel's knowledge. But the money was not the only thing she had found. Mercer had been using the private archive to store copies of documents that could expose him. Eleanor had planned to show everything to Nathaniel. Then she learned that someone had already warned him. Aaliyah read the next line over his shoulder. Nathaniel had been told that Eleanor was planning to leave him. He had been told she was taking company documents. He had been told Denise was helping her. Nathaniel closed his eyes. I believed it, he said. Aaliyah did not answer. The letter continued. Eleanor had never left voluntarily. She had trusted the wrong person to deliver a message. She had believed Nathaniel would come to the archive. Instead, Charles Mercer had arrived first. The final page contained a single sentence. Nathaniel, if you ever find this, know that Denise protected the truth because she believed you were not ready to hear it. Nathaniel lowered the letter. Aaliyah looked at him. What happened to my mother? He did not answer immediately. Then he opened a final drawer in the desk. Inside was a small cassette recorder and a handwritten note. Aaliyah pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then a woman's voice came through the old speaker. Eleanor. Nathaniel. If you are hearing this, then Denise finally decided you were ready. Nathaniel stood perfectly still. Aaliyah listened. The man you trusted did not destroy your life. I did not leave you. And Denise did not betray you. The truth is simpler than the story you were given. The recording paused. Then Eleanor spoke again. You were never meant to find this alone. Aaliyah looked at Nathaniel. He looked back at her. For 18 years, he had believed he was searching for the woman he had lost. Now he understood that the truth had been waiting for him to become the man who could finally accept it. The recording ended, and the room became completely quiet. For a moment, Aaliyah could hear only the soft rain against the windows and the faint hum of the old recorder. Nathaniel stood beside the desk with Eleanor's letter in his hand. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. Not weaker, just less protected. She was alive, he said. Aaliyah looked at him. Your wife. Nathaniel nodded slowly. At least when she recorded this. Then where did she go? He looked at the empty shelves. I do not know. The answer no longer carried the certainty it once had. For 18 years, Nathaniel had built his life around a conclusion. Eleanor had left. Denise had known more than she admitted. Charles Mercer had been loyal. Every part of that story had seemed solid because he had repeated it for so long. Now the truth had begun to loosen each piece. Aaliyah picked up the final page of Eleanor's letter. Beneath the sentence about Denise protecting the truth was a handwritten address. Not a location in another state. Not a foreign country. Just a small town in Maryland, less than an hour from Baltimore. Aaliyah recognized the name. Her mother had taken her there once when she was a child. She had said they were visiting an old friend. Aaliyah had never met the friend. Nathaniel read the address. Your mother knew where Eleanor was going. Maybe. You knew this place? I remember the road. Nathaniel looked at her. Then we need to go there. Aaliyah studied him. You cannot simply decide that I am part of this because my mother knew your wife. Nathaniel lowered his eyes. You are right. The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him. I have spent 18 years assuming that every answer belonged to me. Aaliyah said nothing. Nathaniel placed the letter on the desk. Your mother tried to protect Eleanor. She tried to protect me. And I spent years believing she was part of the reason I lost everything. Aaliyah looked at the old photograph. Her mother and Eleanor stood side by side, smiling at something beyond the camera. They had trusted each other. That much was clear. My mother never told me the truth, Aaliyah said. Maybe she was waiting for the right time. Nathaniel looked at the message she had found earlier. Do not trust the man who owns the house. Or maybe she was waiting for me to become someone she could trust. The sentence remained in the room. Aaliyah did not forgive him. Not yet. Forgiveness was not a door that opened simply because someone finally found the key. But she saw something in his face that had not been there before. Not pride. Not control. Regret. Nathaniel walked back through the hidden archive and returned the documents to the desk. Then he picked up the black leather wallet. The wallet that had brought them there. He opened it. The money was still inside. The cards were still there. But the silver key was gone. Aaliyah looked at it. Where is the key? Nathaniel placed it on the desk beside the photograph. It belongs to the person who found it. Aaliyah stared at him. You are giving it to me? I am returning it. The difference mattered. She picked up the key. It felt warm from his hand. Outside, the rain finally began to fade. Dawn was approaching beyond the gray windows. Nathaniel looked toward the locked eastern wing. For the first time in 18 years, the door was open. But the truth waiting beyond it was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something neither of them could undo. Aaliyah walked toward the hallway with the silver key in her hand. Nathaniel followed several steps behind. He did not walk ahead of her. He did not tell her where to go. He simply followed. And as the first light of morning entered the old Whitmore estate, the woman who had once been invisible in that house carried the one thing the billionaire had spent 18 years searching for. Not money, not power, not even the past. The truth.